Hi, welcome to Lesson 1 of Ikebana for Beginners. By now you should have ordered or found your equipment, but I'll review what you need. Just a plain kitchen bowl with some water in it to cut the stems underwater, kenzan, alias pin frog, and some sort of scissors or shears. So I'll let you get your flowers for this lesson. Hopefully you can find some good ones. What you're going to need is 3 main stems or long stems. It can be any material, but hopefully something that you can find that can be fairly straight up for starters. And then you'll need 3 focal point flowers. These should be not little floofy flowers, but something with a little heft to them that draws the eye to them. And then you'll need some filler material. This could be baby's breath or anything that is kind of small and fluffy. This is to fill in some of the space. So we'll start with the just your work situation. I will be doing the arrangements from behind so you can see them, but when you work you'll be of course standing in front of your arrangement. I like to work standing up. It's just a little easier to put things in. You'll need to stand back and look at your work periodically. It's okay to sit down, but preferably standing up. And find a quiet room or place in your house with a few distractions if you can, and then you'll be able to get to work. So put some water in your container, and again, if you don't have a Ikebana bowl, you could just use a ceramic bowl or a casserole dish or anything you have around the house for starters. And then we'll work on the basic structure, which is starting out with 3 main stems. And to measure the length of the main stems, we would take the length of your container, the width of your container, and do it times 2. So this would be your longest stem here. So twice the width of your container. And then with most materials, not tree branches, but flower materials, you would cut the branch underwater. That helps it draw water immediately instead of air, so it will help keep it fresh longer. So you've got your first stem here, and when you insert it into the kenzan, put it straight down first. So grasp it with both hands, push straight down, and then you don't want it sticking straight up. You'll want it at a little bit of an angle and a little bit forward. So then you can just use your hands to push it to the right position. So see, this is facing somewhat forward. And remember in the introduction I told you about the Buddhist altar? That had to do a little bit with the positioning because they wanted it to spring outward and catch your eye by springing out from the altar, which was against the wall. So that's the origin of having it face forward. It also makes it more lively. And also a lot of arrangements, you don't see them from all around. You see them from just that type of angle as if it was in that niche. So that's just left over from the tradition. Now for your second stem, it should be about 2/3 the length of the main stem. So just eyeball it and cut it underwater. That's a little long, so always good to start out too long rather than too short. And again, stick it in straight near the main stem and then bend it as needed. Again, this can face way forward. Then the third stem should be about 2/3 the length of the second stem. And this isn't an exact science, just use your eye and see what looks good. I kind of like to have things facing in. My sensei calls it a hugging pattern. So rather than having them all face the same way, which is also okay, that makes it look more windswept, you might want to make it face in. So that's up to you, and depending on the material you have as well. So here's your 3 main stems. Tilt it forward. And now you'll go for your 3 focal point flowers. If there's any difference in them, pick the biggest one to be the lower focal point. And this is a little bit hard to show with these flowers, but you want the flowers to be facing up. This is facing up like it's going toward the sun. This is facing down. So just eyeball it and see if you can see that it looks more lively facing up. Down, up. And again, that'll come to you more as you study more. So again, cut it underwater. And same thing with the flowers. This needs to be a little shorter. Place them into the kensan straight, and then bend them if necessary to look forward. Again, see, these are leaning toward the viewer. So here's your first focal point flower. And the second one, it's kind of the same rule. The second one should be taller than the first one. Again, not an exact formula for the length, but you'll learn to do it with your eye. So here's the second. And the focal point should be shorter than the tall main stems. So I'm putting this here. And then the third one should be either longer or shorter than the second stem. It doesn't matter which. Again, use your eye. And I think I'll make it shorter because this one's pretty tall. But it should be taller than the first stem. Okay. So, first focal point, second, and third. And remember to not have things spaced the same distance apart. Again, you'll learn more as we get into further lessons, but the symmetry of Ikebana is different than the symmetry that you've learned in Western flower arrangement, where things are often even. You'll maybe get just a big ball of flowers that are the same length. A lot of what Ikebana is in and out and differences in length of the materials. It just makes it more aesthetically pleasing for the Japanese aesthetic. So again, you don't have to obsess about this in your first lessons. And now for the filler material. This is some tiny leucadendrons. These are carnations, just in case you didn't see that, and these are broom. So with the filler, again, you can make an initial cut, but then cut the stem underwater and strip off things on the bottom leaves, because you don't want leaves going into your water. It'll decay and just make it not look as clean and pretty. So filler, we're going to just take several of these and put them in, partly to fill in some of the open spaces and partly to hide the kensan. You don't want to look into the bowl and see the kensan. So and another point with Ikebana is you're going to want to have some material in the back to give it some depth. It's supposed to look natural, and if you saw things growing in a glade naturally, they probably wouldn't all be up front. You'd have various depths and heights of things. So keep that in mind. Strip off the bottom leaves, cut underwater, have it facing forward, and again, this is going to help hide the kensan. And it's okay if some material overlaps or even slightly covers others. We don't need to see every single flower discreetly. Again, in nature, you might have a tree where one branch obscures another, so that's fine. And with filler like this, you can use some of the leftovers to put in back for depth. Here's a nice fluffy one for the front. And you'll also see that the colors of these go well together. They've all got a little bit of pink in them, which is nice. One more in here. And I think I'll put a longer one off to the side. It's all kind of bunched together a little bit, so it's nice to have one go off to one side. Okay, let me see if I got everything here. Yes, I told you that you should step back and look at your arrangement every now and then, make sure it looks good from a distance, and keep in mind where you're going to display it. If it's going to be up higher, then try and work up higher so you're looking at it at the correct angle. And one more thing, just some tips for keeping your arrangement fresh. When you display it in your house, try not to put it right in a sunny window if you live in a hot place, because the sun will wilt it faster. Another tip is to put a pinch of salt in the water. That helps stop bacteria from forming, which is part of what wilts flowers. Another thing is you can change the water if you have some sort of siphon or are able to pour it out. If you change the water every 3 days, things will last longer. And let's see. Also, if a flower does wilt and everything else looks good, you could just take out the wilted one and either replace it or rearrange your arrangement so things look more fresh. So that's it. Thank you. Enjoy.